Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Okay friends, so today I'm going to be bringing you kind of an updated list of my favorite heroines. I know that this isn't everyone's favorite. They usually want to know, the favorite book boyfriends or whatever. But when I looked back, I realized I hadn't made one of these in quite a while. And on Saturday, I actually have a video coming out that is my books that I will accept no criticism on. And of course, a lot of those are my favorite books. A lot of those have my favorite characters, which is why they're there. And when I looked back, I realized I hadn't made an updated like favorite badass heroine or all-star heroine or girl crushes. I've made those type of videos before, and I wanted to make kind of an updated list. Now, if you do end up going back and watching some of those older ones, you'll see a lot of crossover. But we do have a couple newer additions to the list, which we'll get to as we go. But yeah, for the most part, this usually stays the same for me. And so it takes a lot. It takes a lot for a heroine to wiggle her way onto this list, because these are kind of like, how do you put it? Like, these are the heroines I feel like that have different parts of me in them. I don't know another way to say it, right? And they're like that version of me that I wish I could be. Or, even with all their flaws, they feel like I would look up to this person in my life, or I want to be her, right? So this is the video of like, I want to be her when I grow up. I don't necessarily want to live their lives, because a lot of the things that makes great heroines is great pain. There isn't a single heroine on this list that hasn't gone through horrible pain that makes her so strong, that makes her so powerful. And there's different things that make them strong. Some of them, it's motherhood, which I greatly admire and aspire to be myself one day. Maybe it's being, well, of course, what we're reading, maybe it's being a wonderful lover and partner. Maybe it's being a really good friend or sister. Quite a few of these, well, not quite a few, like 3 or 4 of these, it's being a really good sister, being that. And those are all things that I, see in myself and wish I was even more of. So that's where I'm coming at with this list. Of course, I could pick a ton. I have, I think 11 for this, because one of them is it involves 2 books, which I'll get to when I get there. But I'm going to go through these heroines. And for the most part, these aren't in order, but my top 2 are like my top 2, and I'll save those 2 for the end, because I do have like a top 2 or 3 usually, though the others may rotate. So let's just get into it. I'm just gonna start grabbing them off the pile and going through them, but yeah, let's do it. So Louvain from Entreat Me by Grace Draven. I read this one back in, I wrote some of this down, I read this one back in 2021, I believe is when I read about Louvain. Or 2022, I guess. I read it the very beginning of 2022. And this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. But what I love about it is that her sister is actually more like the Belle character, to begin anyway, right? And Lou, she is a widow, and in her small town, she looks out for her father and her sister now, but her husband was actually an undertaker or whatever they called it in that time, and she helped him with that. And they were very much in love, and he died of an illness. And, so that leaves her to kind of move back in with her father, and she's looking out for her sister. And her sister ends up getting wooed away by this young gentleman, and she follows after, because she's like, hell no, you ain't leading my sister astray. And following her sister, they end up at this magical castle. And at this magical castle, her sister is supposed to stay there, or is supposed to like marry this guy. And again, it's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And so this young gentleman, which I can't remember his name, I remember the dad's name, of course, is Ballard. But the son is trying to break a curse, because there's a curse on this castle. And Ballard, as I said, the father, the lord of this manor, has actually taken on most of the curse, and he's actually turning into kind of this being of the forest. He's kind of turning into this monster. He was actually cursed by his dead wife, who was a evil hag, and the only good thing she gave him was his son. And anyway, Lou showing up there, she's like, okay, this is all well and good that you want to break this curse, but number 1, you ain't marrying my sister in shame like this. And if you're staying here to woo her, because you will woo her, you're not pushing her in anything, I'm going to stay here as a chaperone and make sure that you two behave yourselves. And in the spring, because they end up getting like snowed in there basically. And she's like, I'm going to be here and I'm going to make sure things are appropriate, because if you guys decide you don't want to get married, I don't want my sister to be ruined. So she's very practical to start. And so she's kind of roped into this, right? But there very quickly is this deep pull between her and Ballard, and she's very clear she's only here for the winter, but you know, he hasn't had any companionship in all these years either. And yeah, so there becomes a relationship between them. And the reason why Lou makes this list is for a few reasons, of course. One of them is how protective of a sister she is. I love how she has a lot of motherly tendencies towards her sister, who I believe it's her younger half sister. Because I think what happened is, like, her mother had died and then her father married this girl's mother. I believe that's what it was. Either way, I know she's a little bit older than her sister, and so she feels very protective over her. And her younger sister is very, like, harumphed by that. But Lou knows how dark and dangerous the world is and how tough it is on a woman who's on her own, you know? And she just refuses to have her sister's choices be limited, you know, in going to this castle and getting married without fully knowing the guy. Like, she's taking a big risk. But while she's there, her and Ballard have some amazing conversations. She's very prickly. She's very brash, very bold. You know, she's a widow. She isn't the blushing virgin of this. And so when her and Ballard start feeling attracted, which, number one, he can't believe that she'd be attracted to him, this like monster looking, but she being a little bit more, you know, not as innocent as some people might be. She's like, I see what is to be attractive about you. And it's like, it's the inside, and I'm in for it, right? And so they become lovers for the winter time. And, you know, of course, we're going to need to break a spell and we'll do these things. But I love this. It's my favorite Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I know there are a lot, and there are a lot of good ones. But this one is it for me. This one has some of the most beautiful lines I've ever read. There is an absolutely beautiful thing in the epilogue, which I always love to share. And she says to him, "You must live another 4 centuries, Ballard, as must I. Any less, and I'll feel cheated of loving the finest man I've ever known." And he says, "My beauty, if we lived 1,000 years, I'd still feel cheated." "I will be a shrew until the day I die," she says. "Just promise me you won't curse me when you expire," which is what his dead wife did. And she says, "Of course not. My ghost will just nag you for all eternity." And that's just a small piece. I know that's very out of context, but that's the type of like humor and sarcasm they have that's just covering over this very deep feeling that they both have. And I just love that because, again, I really see myself in her. I'm a very protective friend, a very protective sister, though my sister is the older one of us. Like, I'm just that very protective person. And yeah, so I love her. We will not talk 8 minutes about every one of these, I promise. I just haven't talked about this one in a little bit. I mean, I talk about it enough, but I haven't talked about it in a little bit, so I want to go in more detail with this because, you know, every so often I need to remind people how great this is. It's a standalone book. The audiobook's really good. And I just adore this couple so much, and just the whole, you know, it has all the good Beauty and the Beast things that tick it off. It's just that she isn't necessarily the beauty in the Beauty and the Beast part of it. But yet she is at the same time. So anyway, it's great. I just loved the freshness of like her not being the virgin innocent. It's not that she's some harlot or anything. She was a married woman, but she had a husband and he was a good husband. Honestly, I love that. I mean, I don't love that like a husband would be dead, but I really like something about, I like when a hero is helping a heroine through after an abusive partnership, but I also love when, you know, she's seen what real love is, so you're not going to just be able to sweep her off her feet, right? That happens in The Madness of Lordy and Mackenzie. It happens in The Takeover, happens in that one, where they had a love before, so you really have to be on the ball. Anyway, All right, next up, these are the 2 books that I said I have 11 on the list. And that's because for my all-star heroines, because I made this list based on like their name. So I decided to go with Sloan. But which Sloan should I pick? If you guys don't know, it's kind of a joke. There are like 101 books with a Sloan as the heroine's name, particularly Mafia ones. So I picked Sloan as one of my favorite heroines, but I have 2 different books with a Sloan. And I love both of them. So we'll start with Ivan just real quick. This is, of course, kind of the beginning of the the Sophie Lark Mafia verse, if you will. And this is Ivan, and in this we have Ivan, who is the head of a bratva, and we have Sloan, who she's an American, and she is a hit woman, and she's sent in to kill him, and she's very conniving, she's very clever, and so her plan is to sneak in, stab him with some killing chemicals, and then get out of there before anyone even knows. She's sly like a fox, right? But Ivan didn't become a bratva boss on accident, and he actually catches her as she tries to kill him, and he takes her captive. And so now this is a captive, and he should just kill this person, but he wants to find out who hired her, because she doesn't have a grudge against him. She's a mercenary, she's a hit woman, and so he wants to torture it out of her, and some of that torture becomes very interesting. But I love this. Not just why I say this is Sloan isn't a favorite heroine of mine in here just because of this book. Again, this is the beginning of Sophie's like Mafia world, and so we see Sloan show up in other places, and we see her as a mom later on, and we see how her connection with Ivan, how it like lasts and endures, and I love that so much. Touches my heart so much. So I thought it was cheeky to put double Sloans on here, but also she really is kind of my favorite. I know, I do love Riona a whole lot, but if I like had to pick, like I love her story with Raylan, right? I love Riona with Raylan. Sloan is just so badass even on her own, and again, things that happen in other books where she pops up, that if I have to pick a heroine of hers, I would actually pick Sloan for my all-star badasses, right? Again, she has like 10 other heroines I also like, but Sloan was there. And then, of course, we have Sloan from Carnal Urges. And again, I won't go into too much detail about this one because, spoiler alert, this book for sure shows up on the next video I have coming out, where I go in a lot of detail about all of my books that are favorites, right? But this is my favorite J.T. Geisinger. This is my favorite book of 2021. This came out in 20 or 2021? Yeah, 2021. This was my favorite book. And I just, what can I even say? I mean, Sloan, she gets kidnapped by Declan, but Declan isn't the head of the Mafia when he kidnaps her. But once he kidnaps her, his head of the Irish Mafia dies, and now he's in charge, and he had kidnapped this woman who is nothing but trouble. She does not blink in the face of kidnapping. She stares down this Mafia man. She can charm just about anyone. And Daddy Declan might want to pretend that he can't be charmed by her, but it doesn't take long until she has him eating out of her hand. There is some absolutely wonderful scenes in this book. It has some of my favorite banter. It has some amazing sex scenes, but it's even things that happen outside of their sex scenes that I love so much. I adore it. And so I love Sloan. I love that in this case, she's the, she's the physically weak, the physically not powerful one. And she's still able to make not only Declan, but like his whole crew of men eat out of her hands so easily. And it's not even with like sexual persuasion or anything. I mean, with him, there's a little bit of that. But with her men, they just love her. Like, they're just drawn to her. And I love those type of people, right? So, Sloanie, she's definitely on there. So, that was my cheeky 2-for-1 special there is I did Sloan. I did 2 Sloans. Okay, let's, of course, pop up Willa here. This was my favorite read of 2022. I can tell you that. Absolutely adore Willa and Cade. Again, I talk about this one all the time. This one is very well known, but this is a single dad nanny romance. Again, this is another person that they're like Sloan and Willa, we'll say, not far apart, right? This is a contemporary nanny romance. That one's a mafia romance. But there are a lot of similars, right? There's also the grumpy sunshine thing, and just the banter is so good. And, you know, her moments with Luke, the way that she is such a good nanny to him, and like, they do so many fun things together, but also she doesn't let him get away with anything. And the way that Kate is just like, she's in my house, I'm having to see her all the time, she's perfect for me, but she's too perfect for me, she's too young, I'm old and crabby. He's not that old, he's 38, like, you know, to her that's not even that big of a deal, but he sees it like it. And she just absolutely comes in and takes both Luke and Kate by storm and just loves them up so much. And she's just such a light, but she also doesn't take any crap, but she's also not mean. You know, she's just very much like, there's a moment in the beginning where he's giving her a lot of shit because it's clear he's attracted to her and he doesn't like that, and he doesn't want someone he's attracted to like living in his house. And so he's being very tough on her, and she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave. And he's like, what? She's like, you obviously don't want me here, and I'm not gonna be bullied by you. Like, I know I'm getting paid, but I don't need this. This is a favor. And she doesn't actually need the job either. She is doing it as a favor. And so he has to admit, he's like, I do need help, and I'm sorry, this boy is my whole world, and I'm scared. I'm scared to have someone taking care of him, but like, I need you. And she's like, all right, I'm gonna help you, but don't do that shit anymore. And I just love that. I love that. Keeps him in line, but also it's great. And once the mighty fall, he's just butter for her. He's just butter for her, and it's great. I tried to be pretty like picking from different places, but I realized that I have 2 books from the same author, but she just writes such great heroines that I had to do it. So one of them I'll just talk quickly about. It's Sea of Ruin. Again, this is in my favorites of all time. I read this book in 2018. I've loved it since then. Bennett Sharp is our badass pirate queen. This is an MMF as well. She is married, but she feels like he betrayed her. She gets kidnapped by a pirate hunter. She's going to be taken to be hanged, and she's going to do whatever she has to, use her body, use her mind, use her wits, to stop that from happening. This is very dark. She gets put in lots of dark situations, but she refuses to like be broken. And I love that about her. I love that about her. So again, I'll talk a lot more about this one in the video that's coming on Saturday. But I knew I had another Pam Godwin that I wanted to add because I happen to have just reread this book, and I'm rereading the second book because the third book is coming out later this month. And when I was thinking of all-star heroines that I want to be like them, heroines who have their weaknesses, but their strengths are having a cool head, thinking things through, not overreacting to things. That doesn't have to be how everybody acts, but those are what I'm looking for in heroines that just really work for me. And currently one of those heroines is Frankie. This is actually the only addition really to this for this year so far. That doesn't mean I don't have other books I really love, but there's stiff competition to this, right? But Frankie is in just honestly a more unattainable situation than even like Bennett, who's like a pirate, okay? The stuff that Frankie has to face when she gets kidnapped by this good-looking, suave son of a bitch and taken to his abode in Alaska where his 3 sons live, and now she's trapped. She has no idea why she's there. She doesn't know the purpose. She doesn't know what's going to happen. Is she going to be murdered? Is she going to be raped? Is she going to be fed to the wolves? Like, what's going to happen? And she has only herself to count on for a good part of this. See, I reread this. Like, I annotated the living hell out of this book. But the way that she looks evil in the face, literally looks the embodiment of evil in the face, and is like, I'm gonna kill you, you know? And the devil in here, man, the devil in here, he thinks he's got it all under control, and he's just like, you can't kill me, like, my survival, like, your survival depends on mine. And she's just like, I'm promising you now, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna be the last thing that you see. And she is weak. She is unprepared for this. This is not what she should have ever had to face. But her determination and her will after the things that she goes through, I mean, obviously, again, there's a theme with these books. Like, that's the type of heroine that stands out to me. But damn, she is fierce. And yeah, rereading this, I think it even more. That I'm just like, how? Like, how? You know, obviously it is fiction. So, you know, we don't actually live through that. But just wild, y'all. Just wild. Okay, then we have Nesta Archeron from A Court of Silver Flames, but from the ACOTAR series. And I know she's a bit controversial. She's a bit controversial. The people that love Nesta, like myself, we really love her. And the people that hate her, they can't get over what she does in earlier books, or they don't like her attitude, or she's too bitchy, it takes too long. I get it. I get it. I get it. But there's a few very specific reasons why Nesta works for me. And a lot of them have to do with things I've already mentioned, right? She is very protective of her sisters. Does she show it towards Feyre for a good part of it? No, she doesn't. But that's because she's really buried that part of herself and has tried to tell herself she doesn't care about any of it. And really what is corked into that bottle is just so many feelings. And what we see for particularly, right, this book where we're seeing in her head, finally, like we're in her head and we're with her, is how much she has tamped down on those and just is like, I refuse. And so much so that she is a sea urchin to everyone else. She's a porcupine on the outside, and she is just hurting people all around her because she refuses to crack that open and feel the hurt herself, you know? And she also has some daddy issues, okay? Can anybody empathize? Me? I can, for sure. I even empathize with, like, her father turns it around. He's there when he's really, really needed in a part of everything, right? But the thing that Nesta takes on is that you were there for literally, like, the world at a time when they needed it. Like, there's something her father does that really, like, helps everybody out a lot. But he wasn't there when, like, they needed it. When they needed him to literally help them get through another day, he couldn't do it, you know? And so now it's this torn thing of like, I missed out on having that out with my dad because I just have to, like, he's dead. Like, I just have to, like, I have to forgive him because he died, you know? And she's not ready to do that. So that, I don't know. Again, I know she doesn't work for everybody. I know she doesn't, but I feel for her so much. And her dry humor, again, the way she throws jabs at other people, the way that she's just barely taking care of herself. She doesn't even want to be there. The way she likes some smutty books. I love that about her too. I love her, like, her claw back from brokenness, I think is unlike some of these other ones that we see, right? I think that of all of these people that these women that I've shared who've went through stuff, Nesta is she is at the lowest of any of them that we're talking about. Even someone I'm going to get to who's literally been, like, tortured for her whole life. I feel like Nesta emotionally, mentally, she's at the lowest of any of these women, and she climbs her way out, you know? But she first has to find the will to even give a fuck, you know? So I don't know. She's the one, man. I love Nesta. I understand her in a way not everyone does. And I love Feyre too. I absolutely do. I really do. But there was something in Feyre, like, Feyre wasn't broken the same way. There was just, she wasn't. She wasn't broken in the same way that Nesta was. She was broken in her own way. Absolutely. Yes, yes. But the way that Nesta was broken, like, she didn't have the same grit inside at the time that she did. So anyway, that's just my small little bit on it. But I adore her. I love Cassian and Nesta together, of course. And Cassian is kind of the perfect golden retriever to her black cat, the sunshine to her grumpy. And he, you know, gets fed up eventually too, and he has to kick her in the ass in the way that he does too, but he's also there for her when nobody else can be. So Nesta is in my all-star heroines, and I hope we get to see more of her soon. I love seeing where her and Cassian are at now, and yeah, I love them. I love them, guys. I love them. Okay, then, all right. Now we have another one that this one's kind of like, well, I wouldn't call it a cheat, but like, I know not everyone's going to agree with the way I'm doing this. But when I think of all-star heroines, there is a heroine that I have read more pages of than anyone else, right? Or not more than anyone else has, but like, there's one heroine that I've read more pages about than any of the other heroines, right? And maybe not the one that you're thinking either, but in hours spent, in pages read, there is a heroine who shows up again and again and in many different ways, and I can't get enough of her. Okay, and who is that? Well, it's Hermione Granger. I know she's many different Hermiones in all of these, but there's something about her, right? There's something about Hermione Granger, who was in basically YA or even middle grade level books. And something about that character has sparked millions and millions and millions of pages written about her. Most of them with one suave Death Eater that deserved to have her. Sometimes it's with a nerdy friends to lovers scenario, right? But there's something about it that Hermione is the staple of all of those. She's the one we can most easily put ourselves in the place of. She is, you know, my tool to put myself into these stories. And I just love her. And again, I can't put her in just to one box because, again, I am talking about the Hermione of fan fiction, and she's a different Hermione in every fan fiction that we read, right? From the very dark and painful, you know, Manacled, where it is just, I mean, she is definitely someone to aspire to a more, you know, more like sexy type of lady where she's got some stuff to work through there, to one where it's an arranged marriage and we're gonna make the best of it in our kinky selves, right? I love the character of Hermione, and I love anytime I get to read her. And so yeah, she's in my all-star heroines. It's Hermione of fan fiction. It's my list, and I'll do what I want to, right? If you don't approve of that, you can count both of the Sloans as their own then, if you want to. But who would care? No one's going to care. All right, now I'll share the one that you guys might have thought that I meant when I said I've read the most pages about this heroine, because I've also read a lot of pages about this heroine, and that, of course, is Claire Fraser. Yes. Claire Fraser is another character that is, I mean, I wouldn't call her controversial, but she's not everybody's cup of tea. But she is our vessel into Outlander. She's the one who Jamie Fraser has picked, so she must be pretty special, y'all. If the king of all men has made her his queen, there's something special about Claire, okay? I will say she's someone that I've warmed to over time, right? Like when you read her in the beginning, like this whole book is in her point of view, right? So she is your vehicle into the story. But as you move through the story and you get other people's perspectives on her, people who don't like her, people who love her, people who are her daughter or her son-in-law or her husband, you get to see an even fuller picture of who she is. And I think she's pretty badass when we look at kind of the like small parts of her too, of like traveling through time, you know, losing two husbands in two different times, and then going through getting one back, and then war and miscarriage, and, you know, losing a child twice in different ways, and then getting it back. You know, like there's so much she goes through. I love that she's a nurse and then a doctor, and she's always trying to improve her skills. She's a healer and a helper, and she's also, you know, doesn't pull any punches. She doesn't lie very often unless she has to about something, and she's that perfect partner for someone like Jamie. You know, she adores him with every cell of her being, but she also gives him enough shit to keep him on the right track sometimes too. And so I love her. I see her as like a good friend as well as a mom sometimes when she's in her older years now, and I just love reading her story. And so she for me is definitely an all-star heroine. She will be for many, many years, I'm sure. And I'm loving rereading her stories right now just so much. We're on to the Fiery Cross for our September book club. So love it. All right. And now we're down to 2. By the way, these, I forgot to make an announcement, but these top 3 are the ones that, like, they are my top 3. So Claire, and then these other 2. So someone who I honestly have been really wanting to reread the trilogy about this heroine, but I need to be in a mentally very stable place to go to this, because this is a story that feels the most real to me for what the characters are put through and how tough it is for them to stay together when no one really wants them to be together and people are trying to pull them apart. And yeah, anyway, who is it? So I have Bristol from the Grip trilogy, and this is a trilogy that if you have not read it, you are doing yourself a disservice. I don't know how else to say it. I was very afraid to read this trilogy for a long time, okay? If you're newer here, which a lot of you are, I read this one in the beginning of 2021. Near the beginning of 2021, I read this, and I read it for I did a vlog reading some of Crystal's favorite books, okay? Way back, we were newer friends, right? And it was when I was a little braver to read people's, like, favorite books for I did it as kind of like a gift to her for, I think it was it near her birthday? I don't know. Maybe if you're watching this, Crystal, maybe you'll remember when. I can go back and look too, but I think I did it as kind of like a gift of, like, I'm gonna read these, and if I didn't like them, I wasn't gonna say anything. But I read some of her favorite books. I can even tell which ones those were. I read Love Lettering, I think was the one. I read these, and then I read did I read a historical too? I think I read a historical too for that. But anyway, I know I read these, and I read the first one, and then I read the whole trilogy. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. The audiobooks are amazing too. They're fantastic. Definitely listen to those. But the things that Grip and Bristol go to, being in an interracial marriage, having him be a celebrity and her be from a wealthy family, and them, you know, having a working relationship, him being her brother's friend, but, like, she doesn't trust men easily, so she doesn't give him a chance. And then in the very beginning of that, like, if you read the book 1 is kind of a novella about the first time they meet, when they have this amazing chemistry and things are just about to happen for them, and then something stops them from being together. And then we skip ahead a few years, and now she's a much harder, harsher woman who is not ready to be open to the man. And Grip, he is ready to win this woman, but she makes it pretty damn hard, okay? But once we make it to book 3 in this series, okay, this is the 3rd one, they are together for most of this book, but that doesn't mean that their journey is done, and they have so much they go through. There is loss of a child in here in an absolutely devastating way. Like, I could cry right now. We're not gonna do it. That just felt so real, and I've seen people in my life go through that, and it is devastating. And the way that her and Grip, like, it isn't perfect all the time. It isn't perfect all the time, and they still, always, evermore, even after, still, they choose each other every day. They choose love every day, and I just love that, because, again, this is such a, like, human reality. Like, there are marriages that will go through this. There are marriages that will see this. And this is the hope of, like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to be your perfect. It's going to be your happily ever after. And I would be damn happy if it went the way it does for them. And there's a reason why Kenny D. Ryan is a star, everyone. There's a reason. And you know, if you've read maybe her newer series and, like, weren't loving that as much, which, I mean, I do love the Before I Let Go. I didn't really care for whatever the next one was. I didn't really care for that. But this trilogy, if you read nothing else of hers, please read this and go on a journey with Bristol. Bristol has a lot of things, too, that a lot of these heroines do. Like I said, she's very prickly. She has things about her that honestly remind me of Nesta in ways. And she can be a bitch. And she can say hurtful things, and when she gets hurt, she hurts. And again, that's just so real. We've all done that. We've all done that. So she's a heroine that there are a lot of unlikable parts about her, but there's also just, I see myself in her at the same time. Okay, here we go. We are to my favorite, and you maybe have heard me talk about this heroine in recent videos because I just reread this book, and in previous like girl crushes and favorite heroines video, this heroine's always on them. But it's been a couple years, it's been a few years since I reread it, and you never know, maybe other heroines have moved up the list and she would be someone of like, oh, she's still great, but not the top. But rereading this book, she goes right back to the top again, because I've just never read a heroine that has the type of pain that happens to Yvain. And again, I won't go too deeply into this book because I've talked about it a lot recently, put it in videos, but Yvain has lived in nothing but agony her whole life. She's been kept malnourished. She's been physically tortured. She's had bones broken. She's had barely been fed enough so that she stays under taken care of. She's watched her mother die. She feels responsible for her mother's death. She is responsible. She's not responsible, but she's seen as being responsible for Madock's parents dying, and that's actually why he hates her in the beginning. But she is desperate to save their lands from her father, who would ruin them. And she does what she has to do, but now she has to try to reason with Madock, who is very emotional. He's supposed to be kind of the king of his people now, especially with his parents dead, but he's so emotional and angry, and he's a warlord. And so, you know, Yvain has to wheedle with him and deal and bargain her body and bargain promises. And he's very distrustful of her for a very long time. And when she thinks she's finally made a breakthrough, he'll be like, wait, she's manipulating me. Why am I letting this happen? Even though it's not manipulation, they're just learning to trust each other. But he doesn't trust that they're learning to trust, right? So there's so much about her. And even once like she gets to the point where there's a point in this book where someone asks her, like, do you want to get away from him? Because I'll help you. Like, we'll get you away from him. Like, you can still be powerful. You don't need Madock. And she's like, no, I choose him. I know he's meant to be my king. We just got to get through this. And even when he hurts her again and again and again. And also, we're not even talking about him, right? I forgive him by the end of this book, but you're with her where you're like, how can you be redeemed, Madock? You have broken this woman who has only tried to do good for your people and her people and everything. But he doesn't get it until he does. And once he gets it, it's like, but the fact that Yvain can continue to hope and continue to trust and be willing to give him extra chances after what he does, to me, that shows a strong woman. She's not naive. She's strong, because they do need to work together. They do need to be a team if they have a hope of handling what's to come. And it's hard to open your heart again. It's honestly, for her, much easier to open her legs and her body to him than it is her heart, because all she's wanted all her life is affection and kindness and love, and she hasn't been able to have that. So the fact that she's not evil and twisted, the fact that she still has love and goodness in her and is willing to honestly put up with the shit that Madock does and get them to the point where they can fully trust each other and be a team. I just don't know of another heroine who goes through the same thing she does. It is blow after blow after blow. Like, this book is almost depressing, but there's this fire in her. And she says it multiple times. She's like, my father tried everything he could to break my spirit and break my will and mold me into what he wanted. She wouldn't have still been being held captive and tortured if she'd done everything her father wanted. But even after all those years, he could not break her spirit or her determination to be the queen and to take care of her people. And just, I don't think I could have done it, everyone. I don't think I could do it. And so Yvain is my all-star heroine. She's my number one. And if you haven't read this book, it's a tough one to get through. I'm not kidding. This was the 4th time I've read it. It's a bit easier by that time. But it's no joke, y'all. It's no joke. It's wonderful. So, all right, everybody, there you go. Those are 10 or 11 of my all-star heroines. Again, I'll link some of the other videos that I've done. Again, I think a lot of these show up in them again, but I just wanted to remake this one. And again, as I said, coming on Saturday is actually 18 books that I'll hear no criticism of. And a few of these show up in there, but there also are a lot more. And it's going to be a good video. It's going to be a good video. So thank you so much for watching, my friends. Give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you'd like more recommendations. I put up videos 3 to 4 times a week. You can check out my Patreon or even my Amazon wish list if you want to support me somehow. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.